So Toby Perkins, first off, tell us, what are these three tests?
So, I mean, what we are saying is that the results fiasco that happened last year and is likely, UCAS have said, to lead to thousands of people getting results that are not that are higher than what was expected by the universities. Is likely to lead to the universities with far too many people actually getting people pass. So the test that we have is a next step guarantee for pupils. So the government work with universities and colleges and training providers to ensure that all young people can move on to the next stage of their lives. An appeal system that people have got real confidence in and that people are able to access quickly, because the point is, if you've got a result that you dispute, there isn't time for an appeals process that waits for a very long time. And then support for all the education professionals, whether that be those who've given the results, or whether that be the college leaders and university leaders who've already been through a tremendously difficult period over the course of the last 18 months and are now potentially going to face, at the very last minute, a large number of students having achieved their results more than what was expected.
Okay, I'll come back to support for educational professionals in just a minute. But just going back to your first test, a next step guarantee for pupils. So this is for pupils who fail to get into their first choice and they get help with the next step.
Yeah, I mean, it's potentially about those who fail, but actually what is likely to happen is that there will probably be more people who pass than what the university expected, because at the time that the universities and colleges were giving offers, they were still being promised by the government that exams were going to take place. What's actually happened is they will be going into university and colleges based on the teacher assessment. And UCAS had predicted that several thousand more will achieve their offers than the number of places that are available. So you might have a situation where lots of students actually get their offers, expect to attend their university place, but the universities are actually struggling to accommodate the numbers they've got, and the colleges. And this causes huge problems, not just for the universities who are actually struggling to provide the courses, but also that you potentially have people that have passed their grade, but won't necessarily have the learning that someone with that grade in the past would have had, and might actually struggle and potentially drop out. So it is about helping those who failed, but it's also about helping those who've succeeded, but might then find that the next stage is more difficult than they would have done in normal years.
All right, well, let's come on to your third point. You're asking for support for educational professionals to help them get through results week. But let's talk about universities. Today in the Sunday Times, 20 out of 24 Russell Group universities are refusing to end online learning, even when other institutions, whether it's cinemas, pubs, theatres, whatever, are going back to providing the service, pre-pandemic type of service. Why on earth are universities not following suit? Why are they continuing to force their students to learn online when they will get an inferior experience?
Well, I mean, they certainly do get an inferior experience. My son's just completed his master's, and he's done almost his entire master's online. And I really feel for young people with the university experience that they've had. I think there is real nervousness within the university sector that the levels of coronavirus that we've already seen, but also that we're going to see if all the students are back, is going to bring the system crashing down. So it is difficult. The universities, I totally agree with you, are providing an inferior service to that students should be willing to accept. But at the same time, it's not their fault that the levels of coronavirus are still as high as they are, and they are operating within that context. So it is a very difficult situation for them too, and it's all based, I'm afraid, on the government's failure to having got a grip both of the academic and of the virus.
Well, I think most people would say that the vaccine rollout has been very successful, but it's unfortunate that this particular age group have not taken up the vaccine in such a way so that if more university age young adults were vaccinated, perhaps universities wouldn't be so concerned.
Well, I mean, the younger people have only very recently been able to access those vaccines, so they've been left right to the end. I think a lot of the government's sort of rhetoric up to now has been, I mean, I agree with you that the vaccine rollout has been a success, but a lot of the rhetoric has been, it's all on an age basis. And I think a lot of the sort of the noise was that younger people were less at risk. And so it's less surprising that some of them have been slow to take up the vaccine. But I do agree they all need to get vaccinated. But we also know that even people who've been vaccinated still potentially can catch it. Those students who have had the vaccine are also facing exactly the same situation as those who haven't.
Okay, so would you approve of what Sussex University has done in that they're putting all their students into a prize draw with a £5,000 prize at stake, but you're only eligible if you've been vaccinated?
Yeah, I'm absolutely up for carrots of that kind. Clearly, there will be some people who are excluded as a result of medical reasons. But no, I think anything that sort of encourages more people to be vaccinated is a really excellent idea.
What about taking it a stage further and saying you can come to in the real world tutorials and lectures if you've been vaccinated, but you have to do online if you haven't been?
I mean, I'd be less enthusiastic about that. I think that, everything that can be done to encourage people to be vaccinated should. But I think excluding people from being educated as a result of the fact that they haven't been vaccinated is a really sort of difficult step. And the vaccine don't prevent you passing it on. So there may be something around mask wearing or other steps for those that haven't been vaccinated, possibly. But I think the key sort of message from today is that there's going to be a generation of people getting their results, and there's a real worry that the universities and colleges are going to be plunged into chaos, and the government really have to get this sorted this week.
So some universities are also calling for free masks and free PCR tests for undergraduates.
Yeah, well, I mean, that makes total sense. I think there definitely should be widespread access to testing. Testing is still so important, and I think the testing program has been was really inadequate for much of the pandemic, and the success of the vaccine, I think, has taken focus away from the continued importance of testing. I think at the start of this year, lots of people thought that the vaccine was a silver bullet, and once you got your vaccine, that was it, you were fine. We're seeing with the escalating rates, and still escalating rates amongst some of those who've been vaccinated, that testing is also crucially important. And so free PCR tests, free masks would be a really sensible measure that government could take to support universities to open properly.
And what about increasing the demands on the ventilation systems? I was just speaking to Professor Woolhouse, epidemiologist, about this, and that's something that they are doing in Scotland, but don't seem to be doing in England, in schools or universities or colleges.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think that makes a lot of sense.
And tell me about what you think about these students who are petitioning for reduction in fees if the education continues to be online. Do you support them?
I absolutely do. From the context of that student's experience as a parent, I'd be pretty grateful if we could backdate it a couple of years as well, frankly. But I think what we need to understand is that there is not been that saving from the perspective of universities. Actually, universities are hugely financially challenged by coronavirus, both in terms of the fact that they've often it had to make additional services rather than reduce their service. They've raised less revenue as a result of having fewer students on board. So there can only be a credible reduction in tuition fees if that tab is going to be picked up by government. If it's a case of universities that are already hugely financially stretched being expected to reduce the amount that they have, then I think that that's going to be impossible. So I think the students have got a really reasonable argument, but that would have to be something that came from government funding rather than from universities, as I say, because universities haven't made these savings. They've actually are financially worse off as a result of the pandemic.